Welcome back.
Welcome to Decision Space, the only show to take place right here, in the space between the turns in your favorite games. I'm Jake Friedman.
And I'm Brendan Hansen.
And this is the podcast about decisions in games.
Except this week, it's only kind of that, because Jake has played a big box load of games, and we're going to discuss them. We have more than 10 new to the show games that Jake is going to discuss his initial impressions on, 5 games that we're going to revisit, and we're breaking the show into 2 sections, maybe with a surprise thrown in the middle, of Freshies and Refreshies. Are we going to, do you get it, Jake?
It's a really good reference that you'll have to ask us about in the Discord. Yeah, so we'll be talking about my experience at Geekway. And first and foremost, I just want to say thank you to the crew of Decision Space listeners that I gamed with all weekend. That include all the members of the Laughing Table Friends, Charlie, Tyler, Luke, and Jared, and then some other folks making the trek down, including JC, William, Richard, and then Chris, new to the Discord and also local to St. Louis, and I think and Jensen as well. I think that was the crew, and it was awesome to see you all and play games with you all. Just a total dream. So thanks for all the fun times.
Awesome. And I, unfortunately, did not attend, so I will be adding color commentary and also asking Jake insightful questions that hopefully will help get to the bottom of why some of the decisions in these games might be worth your time. But before we do that, we put out a call for reviews, and you all listen, which always feels amazing. Thank you to all of you who left a review of the show. We're going to be reading them out as we always do when a nice review comes in. So the one that we're going to feature this week is from Lumi, who says, "Best board game podcast. Decision Space is the best in-depth board game content you can find on the web, and it is a mandatory listen for any aspiring board game designer." Put that on the box. A mandatory listen. That was me interjecting. Okay, back to Lumi. "Each episode is so well researched that I don't know how they're doing it on a weekly basis." Yeah, us either. Okay, back to it. "Decision Space has been a treasure trove of knowledge and entertainment for my daily commute. 5 out of 5 podcasts, and I wish more content creators take their content as seriously as these guys. Can't believe they didn't give Can't Stop a 10 out of 10 though. Pitchforks out." Thank you, Lumi, for that awesome review. We tremendously appreciate it. 10 out of 10.
Finally, someone recognizes how psychotic it is that we do this on a weekly basis.
Yes. Let us review your review on the show and leave one.
Yeah. Please keep those reviews coming. It's honestly, I don't know how it works, but like I think we got 4 new reviews, and our downloads over the past few days are just like up 100 or 200 downloads from what they normally are. So it seems like a small thing, but like the impact of even a single review on a show the size of ours is like very
Meaningful.
significant and meaningful. So thanks again to people who went out of their way to leave a review. Last thing in the housekeeping section, just to close the loop on this, I want to say thank you again to everyone who voted for us for the Golden Geek Award. Unfortunately, we didn't win this year, but I also want to give a shout out to One Stop Co-op Shop, who did win for Best Podcast, and then also recognized as finalist was Talk Cardboard and Beyond Solitaire. So go check those shows out. I think it's crazy how many high quality shows are in this space, and those are relatively new to me, so I'm excited to dive in as well. So you'll hear more on the Golden Geek hopefully next year, when we'll once again aim for the crown.
And thank you to all of those of you who helped us get nominated. But now, Jake, I want to hear your impressions. So we did an episode on trick-taking games last week. We dove into them for over an hour. And the first thing you did when you got to Geekway, I don't know if it was this, but you played Bottle Imp while you were there. A 1995 trick-taking game by Gunter Cornet, the designer of Hey, That's My Fish and Kahuna. What do you think? This is like a sort of legendary cult classic trick-taking game.
Yeah. So it's a pretty standard trick taker, I think, with a novel twist, which is that there is an imp bottle on the table. I think it starts on a number 19 card. And you play a trick taking game where you'll get points for winning tricks, with the twist that whoever has the bottle imp at the end of the round essentially gets a handful of negative points. And the way it works, the way you'll be exchanging the bottle imp back and forth between players, is that if anybody plays a card below the value of the bottle imp, so below the 19 to start the game, then like the highest card below the value of the current bottle imp has to take it in front of them. So Brendan, if you played a 5 and I played a 12, since both of those are below 19, I would get the bottle imp. And the new number for the bottle imp would be a 12, and you would be able to discard your hand. Also, or your card rather. Also importantly, the highest card below the bottom also is like wins the trick. That's like the winner trick. If everybody plays above it, then just like high card wins the trick.
Are there suits?
Yes, there are suits, and it's a must follow trick taking game. Very standard.
Interesting.
It gets really tricky. I played it at a 4-player game, and I think the game might be not fully recommended at 4. And I think a big part of the reason why is you just with the cards more spread out, you just have very less control, I would say, of what's happening. And we found that the bottle imp was not getting passed around back and forth, and there wasn't really a lot of tension with that. It just became very apparent who was going to end up with
getting stuck.
Yeah. So for the first hand we played, I had the 2, and you play all the cards. So I have to play the 2 at some point, and that's going to very likely win the trick, right? Or the bottle imp. So basically what happened in like the first hand of the game, somebody played a yellow card. Another player was forced to play the only yellow card they had, which was the 3. And then somebody else was able to discard the 1. And like I had led the trick. So then I just had the 2. And I know for the whole entire hand that I'm definitely going to end up with the bottle imp and have the negative cards. So it completely took I think the fun out of it. Like, it just felt like, well, that sucks. Like not only am I screwed, but I'm know it the whole entire time. So there's not even like a fun, exciting tension. What I wanted to see was that bottle imp getting passed around the table. But unfortunately, we just played a few hands of this, and I'm sure that luck kind of balances out over many plays.
Yeah.
But with the cards divided into 4 instead of 3, it felt like that kind of thing kept happening where somebody was forced to jump the card or the bottle imp all the way down to a really low number early on. And then there's just not much going on with the trick taking because you're just playing a very standard sort of high card wins trick taking game after that. And that's just not that exciting. So unfortunately, we're kind of starting off on a sour note here. Bottle imp was a big miss for me.
Yeah.
Maybe it's showing its age. I think trick taking purists obviously think highly of this game, and I don't think I am that. I like the kind of innovative twists that give players like more agency feeling, and this felt like I didn't have much agency at all. Maybe that's just the 4-player count that I played it at, and it would feel much better at lower, but unfortunately, not for me.
And you're not even interested in trying it at 3. Like if you were offered,
I mean,
between this and a new trick taking game, you're playing the new trick taking game.
I think so. Yeah.
Dang, Gunter, letting Jake down. Okay, well let's move on and that's the bottle imp. You played Veil of Eternity, a 2023 release from Air Kong.
So we're just gonna fly through games played in this episode. So Veil of Eternity is a new game that was taught to me by my friend Tyler from the Laughing Table Friends, and it's a small box drafting game that has some really cool and novel mechanisms. So basically, the way the game works is you draw cards from a deck. All the cards in the game are like dragons of various type. That's sort of the theming. They're like some of them are kind of like a little bit more animalist. Some of them are a little more like anthropomorphic, I guess. But pretty cute art, and you're drawing cards equal to the number of players in the game times 2, and then you do a snake draft of the cards. So that everybody will basically put a big chunky token on 2 of the 8 cards. And then you'll resolve your turn, in player order. And the way it works is for each card that you have drafted, you have to make an immediate choice of whether to put it into your hand, or you can right then discard it for different increments of coins. And so all the purple dragons will give you 1 6 value coin. I think they're gems. We'll give you a gem of 6 value. And this was kind of one of the more interesting things because it wasn't equal. One of the dragons gives you 3 1 value gems. So 6 was the highest, and then I think 3 was the lowest. So you might want to take a dragon just for the gem value versus like trying to parse out something that's going to help you build up an engine to ultimately score points that you'll want to take in your hand. Another really interesting and kind of fun, challenging decision is when you pay for the dragons, you aren't allowed to make change. So if I have a dragon that costs 7 and I have 2 6 gems, is it worth it to me to spend all 12 gems to create the value that I need for the 7? Or should I, maybe delay a turn trying to get some 1 gems so I can more evenly pay for that dragon without any spent excess? But then there's another wrinkle, which is that you can only hold 4 different gems at a time, and there are only 6 value, 3 value, and 1 value. So you're constantly tying yourself up in circles, trying to figure out the most efficient way to play cards and pay for them. And there's timing considerations too, right? Because some of them are like pass abilities or engine abilities. So it's like I could maybe more efficiently pay for this next turn, but at what cost? So it was a pretty cool game, I think. For learning a game, all of the cards have text on them. So every round you have to kind of read and internalize the effects of 8 different dragons. You might be able to quickly discount some of them based on what you're trying to do. They're basically 5 different color types. So maybe you're going more for like synergies within a color or whatever. It's like, I don't even care. I'm not going to pay attention to what these blue ones are doing. So that made it a bit tricky just for a first play. And I think it's something that would be much more rewarding the more you go back to it and the more you've kind of like internalized the cards. So that's Veil of Eternity, a game that has simple rules, really simple action choices, right? You're basically buying card or putting it in your hand, picking which cards you want to buy, and then trying to figure out how to pay for them. But in all of those, you're confronted with really interesting choices. So I thought it was good, maybe not great. It didn't like absolutely like jump off the page, but it's one I would happily play again, and I think I would get even more out of it second time. So positive impressions of Veil of Eternity.
Cool. I just sent you an invite on BGA to play.
Oh, I didn't even know it's on BGA.
Yeah, like literally, I just did.
Nice. All right. Well,
cool.
That's cool. So I'll have the opportunity to check it out a bit more.
Awesome. Okay, so that was the Veil of Eternity. Next, you played Condottiere, a 1995 game from 2 Italian designers, Dominique Erhard and Duccio Vitale, and then also Justin Campanian has design credits on this game too. I think because Justin came in when Fantasy Flight re-released this game and did some more design work, adding some more things to Condottiere. But this is another game with a big reputation in a small box that I think a ton of people like and some people dislike. What did you do? Are you which side are you in?
I really enjoyed my play, but I have to tell you, this is a game that just absolutely does not care about its players' feelings, like to an alarming degree. I would even say probably most people in the board game hobby wouldn't enjoy this game for the simple fact that it is essentially an auction game that has the type of auction where if you are the second most, you have to spend all your resources and you don't get anything out of it.
Yeah.
It's just feel bad moment after feel bad moment in this game, it feels like. But it kind of works because it's all spread around relatively evenly.
And themed as an area control game.
Yeah, so the way it works is you have a map of Italy on the board, and you're basically trying to win. Player turn order goes around the table. Whoever's the active player gets to choose one of the regions on the map that you're auctioning off. And the winner of the first person who either gets 3 areas in a row with their marker on it or 5 total markers out on the board, meaning you've won 5 auctions, wins the game. the theme of the auctions are like battles. So the way it works is you go around the table and you get to play cards out of your hand. Most of the cards are just numbered cards, mercenaries, I think is what they're called. I don't know what they're called, like units. So I could play a 1. Then Brendan, you have the opportunity to either pass or play anything into the battle. So say you play a 6. The next player passes is back to me. So I could play another 1. You can pass, and then you're out for the whole rest of the time. And then it goes back to me. I play a 5. So then I win it because you've already passed. So maybe you don't want to pass. You want to say, okay, I'll play a 10. And I say, okay, I pass, right? Because you've
Right.
gone so high, and now you've perhaps overbid or whatever. And then there's also some special cards that add just a lot of spice to the way the auctions play out as well. There's a winter special card that makes all the units in the battle equal to 1 power. So if somebody's used a bunch of high value ones, you can even it up with a winter. There's a card that means you automatically win the battle if you're ahead when you get the chance. So it comes back to you and you're ahead and you have the the
Nice.
card. You could just say I win. There's one that doubles all the value of the cards you've put in there. And there's a 10 value card that can't get reduced to 1 by the winter card. And then there's one that I loved was the Raven card. When you play that, you can take a card back to your hand. So you can basically bait people
Feint.
into expending a
Yeah.
lot of resources and then start, if you have I had one of the hands, I had like 5 Ravens. So I, got into a huge high stake auction and then took back all of my cards, and the other person
Wow.
was forced to spend their 26 or whatever, like most of their hand to win it.
Cool.
And then I kept all my cards. Or you could even take a card out with a Raven, signaling that you're done. They pass and you're like, boom, 10. I actually win it after all. Yeah.
So it seems like with Condottiere, people, what they really love are how these powers affect the game. It seems like that these lead to the sort of dramatic moments that make the game fun and memorable. Sort of built
Yeah.
on a solid foundation. Would you say
It's totally,
true
it's
for you
like
too?
very like resonant of poker almost. Like there's bluffs, there's counter bluffs, raises and re-raises and folds. So I think that's sort of like an intuitive, visceral, high stakes kind of feel that automatically seeps into the game because of that. And I think that is definitely heightened by the way the special cards work, where you kind of are maybe like trying to get somebody to invest a lot. And
Yeah.
then you spend your drummer that doubles everything, or you can take a different route and say like, I'm going to play my drummer first just so that everybody knows like you better not mess with me. Oh, and then the last card, the kind of pièce de resistance, is there's a card like called Spring or Summer Day or something that just ends the auction for everyone. So if multiple people have expended big resources in it and you've just been like going along playing 1 value cards, you could make out huge by just pushing the battle off to another day. And of course all
Yeah.
the cards that were put in there, they're gone.
Is this
So
the
there's
sort of
a
thing where the card set's small enough that you can kind of know which powers are still out there too?
Yeah, I think yeah. I mean, relatively, you don't use all the cards though, so you'll never have perfect information. But I think there's like 3 of each special power, so if there's like if there's 2 of the spring days have been played and you have the third, you don't have to worry about it. That
Cool.
definitely comes up in the game.
Nice.
But the thing that's really weird about it is the reason people that my first impression was like not favorable is like you just get dealt random cards. You might just get a bunch of 1s and just have crap hand and you're screwed totally. That could definitely happen. And then to make matters worse, seemingly in the next round, say you get a horrible hand round 1, don't win any auctions. That problem is compounded because in the next round, players that have you get dealt 10 cards plus 1 card for each territory you control on the board. So it's like a very clear seeming runaway leader problem. However, that's what we thought at first, and we're like, this sucks. But I actually started off with a big lead and ended up losing the game because people knew they could not let me win any auction. So anytime I entered an auction, there was no fainting or anything. People just expended all possible resources that they had in order to make sure I don't win. So there was like, the collusion against me, even though I
Was
had more
enough.
cards than everyone else, it was enough to stop me, and ultimately I didn't win the game. So I kind of, over the course of the game, I went from like, I don't like these mechanisms at all, to kind of like realizing the robust gameplay experience that they allowed for. And I think even would go as far as to say is that like extra card is probably needed to make those later round more exciting and feel less like, oh yeah, almost like you're just there just cause if you have the lead and waiting for other people to catch up. It's like you have a chance to win
Sure.
when everybody doesn't want you to.
Cool.
So my impression at the end of the day was like very favorable. I mean, all of that plays super quick as well. Probably we're talking like 30 to 45-minute games, just 3 rounds. It packs a huge punch for the size of the box, and probably a game that many, many people won't like at all. But I think the people who do like it will get a ton out of it, which is a great place for a game to be, in my opinion. And I think listening to this description, hopefully listeners have a good sense on what side of the line you'd fall on.
Yeah, and that's Condottiere.
Great. So next up, what? Oh,
Yep.
what?
Nimala.
I played Nimala. It was nominated for a Golden Geek for Light Game of the Year. I've actually played this game twice. I learned it at a game night. I was taught by a friend, and then saw it in the play and win area, so I brought it out. Nimala is a pattern building game where you draft cards each round. You'll draft 3 cards, and the cards are a 2x2 grid of animals. So each square in your 2x2 grid will have a landscape type and an animal type, or it might be blank. It'll have a landscape type but no animal.
So it's like a square with 4 squares in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And what you're trying to do is achieve various objectives. And I love the way the objectives work in this game. So, the objectives can be all kinds of things. It could be to have a penguin in exactly one penguin in different columns. For each one, you get 3 points. Very Cascadia-esque.
Yeah.
Another, like for landscapes, would be like if you have all 4 different landscapes in a row, that would be worth some points. Or the other 2 we were playing with was like have the longest river. There's a river that goes through some of the squares, and then have exactly 6 areas of exactly 6 planes. So you drop these cards, you play them onto a personal grid. You can't go beyond 6x6, and when you play a card, you have to cover up something from a previous card you've played. So it's like this very puzzly pattern building feel. And it plays for 5 rounds. So like in the first round, you're trying to score A and B, and then that moves around like Isle of Skye scoring. So you can kind of look ahead and start trying to figure out, maybe scoring opportunities for the 3rd, 4th, 5th round of the game. And then it kind of escalates because in round 4 and 5, you'll score 3 out of the 4 possible objectives as well. Very light, very quick playing, or I should say, it played quick for us. I could see it being extremely AP inducing for some folks, as you're just like trying to, it just gets really puzzly. It's as puzzly as you want. Like trying to place tiles towards the end of the game to maximize your scoring could absolutely be AP inducing. But if you treat it as like a quick filler, I think it's another game that is pretty great, very replayable because there's a ton of different objectives, and each time you'll use a different combinations of them. Again, very Cascadia-esque in the way that is treated. I think it's another winner. I had a lot of fun playing it both times I've played it, and definitely a game, again, that packs like a bigger punch than the box. This is a very small box game that I think a lot of people would quite enjoy.
So that's Nimala by William Levin. And Jake, I just invited you to play this game on Board Game Arena.
It's on Board Game Arena too. I had no idea.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Every game is on Board Game Arena. What a time to be alive.
2024. Wow. But so yeah, that'll be an interesting one to try. It looks like a little bit like it might be the weight class of Baron Park, but trying to channel Cascadia in a way.
Yeah, I could see that.
But
I think
puzzlier.
yeah.
Interesting.
I think it's more like the decision space is closer to Cascadia in that
Okay.
I think you have like a lot of agency and not very like obvious decisions.
That has my this might be a great game for Maya bells going off.
I think you guys would get a lot out of it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I thought I was going to go to Miniature Market and buy it, but then I saw it's on Board Game Arena. So I was like, okay, that's Jake and I will try it. We'll test it out
Yeah.
and see if I think it'll be a good fit. Okay,
Awesome.
cool. Wait, do you hear that?
What is that? Oh, it's the Reiner
Oh!
Knizz musical interlude.
Let's go. It's been a long time since
Yeah.
we've had an actual Rhino Knizz interlude.
But it is well deserved because, Brendan, I played not one, not two, but three Reiner Knizz games at Geekway to the West this year. And it could have been way more if I didn't put my foot down and say, guys, I'm honestly tired of Reiner Knizz auction games. But there's some exciting ones. So I'm actually going to go from least exciting to me to most exciting to me in this list, Brendan. And I see the order. Okay, let's say the games. And then I'll reveal the order.
Okay,
So I played Medici, the card game, Orongo, and Tower of Babel.
Okay.
Okay,
Is that the order?
No, it's not. Least exciting was Tower of Babel, which you discussed your thoughts on in episode 121. So it's fresh to me, but a refresh to you. Do you want to say what we're doing in Tower of Babel? Just because.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to. So Tower of Babel is this interesting game in which you have a hand of cards and you're contributing cards to building sort of these buildings across the board that are different symbols. So it's almost half area control game, it's not really a negotiation game, but you're contributing resources. And sometimes you really want people to take your resources, and sometimes you really don't want them to. If they take your resources and bring you along, you'll get credit for that being built on the board. If they don't, you get another benefit. You essentially just get points for them not taking your stuff. So it's this interesting game where when you're in the driver's seat, when you're the one taking offers more or less, you're trying to accomplish this area control objective. And when you're not in that seat, you're contributing resources, and half the time you want to tag along, and half the time you want to get as close as possible to giving something enticing. And then you don't want your cards to get taken because you just want a gush of points back. So it's this interesting sort of game of chicken that you're playing at the same time. It's a really unique feel, and it's structured pretty differently than almost any game I've ever played.
Yeah, I didn't have a bad time with this game at all. I think it's pretty interesting, or very interesting, for just seeing a new way of doing an auction mechanism.
Sure.
I just had the one experience, which is kind of like the kiss of death for me, which is that you play a whole game, you're not really sure about what you're doing, and it doesn't feel like, because you can't really kind of grok what's going on or what's going to happen, it feels like you aren't making meaningful choices. And then you win the game and you're like, wait, what? And that never fails to leave me feeling a little bit cold on a game. And I think that was kind of why this one is kind of at the bottom of my list here. I do think it was interesting. The cool thing about it is I think the different incentives in the game actually create an auction where at times you're okay taking a bad deal, like allowing somebody to complete a structure that they really need in order to, so they get like the token. There's like a set collection aspect, like allow them to get the token that's going to be worth more points to them, so that you can A, like get cards out of their hand, and B, put some cubes onto the board in a strategic way for like the area majority that's happening there. That was really neat. It's also neat the way having a bunch of cards of one color can be used almost just to like browbeat your opponents. Like anytime somebody picks a brown wonder, you're like, here, have my 6 cards. And they're like, actually, no.
I don't want those. I want to score the points.
That's 6 points if they, refuse you. So they're almost, maybe it would be half to take your offer. So there's tons of interesting space to play around the auctions. I just found the whole experience of like doing that, like when to accept trades, when to do my own thing, and how to even like manage your hand. Again, really interesting. On your turn, you can just, so everybody draws a card at the end of every turn. You can pass your turn to draw one extra card. So there's a big hand management component where if you don't have the right stuff in your hand, you might not be able to build things that you really want to build, or get in the auctions you really want to get in on. So all of that, I think there's a ton of space to play. I could see it being like immensely replayable and probably a game that just improves and improves and improves as you play with more experienced groups. But it's also just like kind of fiddly too, Brendan.
Yeah.
Like
No, it
having
is.
to
Yeah.
remember to draw a card at the end of each turn and just do that at the end of every single turn of the game. We found ourselves like forgetting at times to, did we add the refusal points for that person? Like, oh, how many cards did you put up? Oh, two. I can't remember. Do we do that or not? Just there's like a lot of like little kind of fiddly bits to keep track of that made it feel less like smooth playing as I typically expect to see in a Knizia game. So that'd be my like review. Worth checking out. I mean, and if you're a Knizia enthusiast, for sure. If you're not, if you're if you're medium on Knizia games, probably I don't think you need to go after this kind of deeper cut.
Yeah. And that's Tower of Babel. Okay, what's next, Jake? I'm dying to
Okay,
know.
so next I played Orongo. That would be
Okay.
number
Wow.
2 on my Knizia excitement list, and I enjoyed this play much more. Orongo is an auction game that kind of feels a little like, I want to say like kind of like roll and write to me, like almost like the path building aspect of the game. So the way it works is you're working collectively building tiles on Easter Island. So there's the big Eastern Island statue heads that you have to build on the beaches of the island, making this game a race. The first person to build 6 statues wins the game, and you can build a statue with like a variety of different recipes. Maybe like 2, if I don't remember what the resources are in the game, but it's like a bird in a house. If you can collect a bird in a house and build a route to a beach space, then you get to instantly complete it and put down a statue on that beach space.
Are the recipes personal or shared?
It's shared.
Okay.
So the way the game works is each round of the game, 3, I think it may depend how many tiles are revealed based on player count, but in our 3-player game, or it might have been a 4-player game. I think it was a 4-player game. I think 3 tiles came out, and these will go on. So the board is the same in every game. So there'll be like a number on the tile. There'll be like 23, and it's a bird. So you'll find the bird space on the board that has a number 23 on it and put it there, and then that will be up for auction.
Okay.
And then the way the auction works is really cool. So you're auctioning shells, which is this like hilariously terrible component choice because they're like these round shells, and you have to put them onto a tile on top of a tile on the board, to like indicate like once you've used it to complete a recipe, and and the path to the beach. And they're like round, so they just constantly are rolling
Roll
off.
all
Like
over
if
the
there's
place.
only
Yeah.
one like orientation that will stay at all, and even that is like wobbling.
And then you have the
So
tall East Ireland heads that you're trying to reach into and grab next to these shells. Is
yeah,
that right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's an aside, but so the way the auction works is whoever spends the most money gets to build 2 of the 4 things first, and then whoever built the second most money, I think I'm getting this right, they get to build the next one, but they don't pay anything, which is really good.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It's huge. So
Yeah.
like getting second in auctions is kind of like what you're wanting to do as much as possible. Of course, like that's everybody's trying to do that, unless maybe you're just like, okay, I need these, so I'm happy to like pay up for them.
Sure.
And the reason you might need them is because you have to connect your routes together. So having tiles next to each other means that it'll be like you can use them to pay the recipe cost, right? If I have a bird all the way on the other side of the board, I would only be able to spend that if I can connect it to another piece and an edge space.
Right.
So
Okay.
having them next to each other or in convenient locations might really matter and change the value of a tile from one player to the next. Then whoever, you can also choose to bid nothing. So if you bid nothing, instead of being able to place a tile, you get all of the shells that have been bid previously.
Okay.
So that's kind
following.
of cool too. Or maybe you
That
get
sounds
half.
cool.
You that's how you get income of shells. If multiple people bid nothing, then they have to split the shells rounded down. So you really want to find a time to like zig while other people are zagging. But of course, like once a big pile of shells is accrued there from auctions, players all want it because A, you're out of resources because you've been using them to bid. So that could be really kind of tricky too. There was actually a turn in the game where every single person in the game tried to collect the shells besides me, and that felt amazing.
That is
They
awesome.
all like they basically pass and they get like 2 shells
Nothing.
each or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's great.
It was great.
They all got caught with their hands in the cookie jar at the same time.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, and it was funny.
That's a fun mechanism.
I think Richard was in the game with us, and before it happened, he's like, "I've got a bad feeling about this." So yeah, that was cool. It was a fun, interactive auction game with like a big race element, and I think the route building too made the auction feel a lot less opaque. Where it's like, I definitely want this, so I'm gonna spend up for it, and just trying to like shoot for second place on auctions a lot. It made it like easy to jump into in a way that auction games rarely are. There's
This
just
is
like enough stuff that is clear in the decision space, I think.
cool to have a spatial component in a Knizz auction game too.
Yeah.
People kind of bill it. Knizz Files bill this as a auction game plus a tile laying game from Knizz. So sort of his two big genres being an entry in both. This is one that you also hear like ripe for a reprint with different
I
different
think, and I
materials.
think that's right. I think the auction is definitely more of an auction game.
Yeah,
I
okay.
would say.
Than a tile laying game. Interesting.
Yeah. But that feels like kind of generous to me after playing it. But
To call
I
it an
think
auction, a
that's
tile laying game.
yeah.
And that's Orongo from
Orongo.
2014. Cool.
And then last, the game that really blew me away was Medici, the card game. So I haven't played Medici, but from what I've heard at the con, I think there's a pretty sizable collection of folks that actually prefer Medici, the card game, to the original Medici. So this game shares a lot in common with the game I've talked about on this podcast before, called Circus Flocati, or also called Summer Banquet or Summer Treasures, something like that.
Okay.
So the way this game works is it's an auction game, but you're trying to no, it's not an auction game. We're not even auctioning anything anymore. You're just getting stuff for free, which is great. Basically, the way the game works is there'll be a round of collecting cards onto your boat and then a scoring round. And when you score, you're scoring for majorities on different types of resources that are printed on cards, and also for the most valuable boat that was collected over the course of round. So you're competing on these two different axes. The way the game works, on your turn, you can flip over cards from the top of the deck, building a line of cards, and then you can take cards from that line from left to right. So you always have to take the leftmost card first, and you can take up to 3 cards. And then you keep going around the table taking cards until everybody's filled up their boat of 5 cards. So, and that's pretty much the game. And it's really interesting because of that like push your luck component and the competition for various things, right? Where it's like, okay, I've got spice, and I'm tied with the player to my left, who has 2 spaces left in their boat. I have 3. Should I take this card that just has a high value for that, or should I pass that up and try and dig for spice to help like cement my majority? And that's the type of decision you're making on every turn of the game. Very simple, almost like party game ish. We played at 6 players, and it played wonderfully well at that player count. I think it's good at, I would imagine it's good at 4 and 5 as well too. Maybe things get a little funkier at the lower player counts. But it was just like a totally delightful game that I was like, this is awesome. Buying this immediately. I'm gonna type it in, gonna buy it, and it's like it's $80 because of course it's like out of print. And I'm like, no, I'm not gonna buy that anymore. So I think this one is right for a reprint.
So, question: did it remind you of Colorado at all?
I wouldn't say Colorado because I mean it's just one line of cards. It's the market.
Yeah.
You're just adding to that line
Endlessly. Yep. Cool.
endlessly. Yeah.
So this is an
But
interesting. Oh,
it does have that interaction because of like not just competing, but also like, oh, okay, like, but if I take this, then that will reveal this card for the person next to me who definitely wants that. And then that kind of thing too. So like super simple rules, but like the implications of everything become really clear and really interesting quickly. Just
nice.
a total blast.
So that's Medici, the card game. And the reason this is one of those games, this was released, Jake, when Knizz was making games with Grail games like Yellow and Yangtze and the other games. And then there were some rights issues. So then Grail games kind of, Knizz doesn't do games with them right anymore. So I think this is probably stuck in out of print limbo for at least a while because of that whole dispute, would be my guess. Because this game was designed when Grail games brought back Medici. And then Knizz was like, well, let's make this game too. And I guess they said yes. So interesting
Yeah,
bit
well,
of
that's
history.
sad. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think if maybe even more the reason to give it a try if you ever get the chance.
Yeah. Medici, the card game. And when you wrote this in the notes, Jake, you wrote Medici TCG. And I said, Knizia designed a trading card game about Medici?
I've had the exact same thought. Like people like online will write Medici TCG, and I had the exact same thought. I'm like, dude, Knizia collectible card game. How can you imagine the alternate reality where like instead of being like Richard Garfield, the Magic the Gathering will never work, that Knizia was like, that's a cool idea. I'm gonna make my own. And it's like an auction Euro game, collectible card game. That would be
Yes. Heck yeah.
sick. I
Sounds
would play
awesome.
that. I would play the hell out of that.
So, does this officially end the Renner Knizia interlude?
Yeah, we have to get back to our normal daily lives with a quick
Okay.
review of Lacuna, a 2023 game by CMYK and designed by Mark Garrett. More on Mark Garrett's later, surprisingly. So you may have seen Lacuna. It's just got like a really interesting approach to a board game box in that it's a cylinder with a cloth circular mat. And you just shake out all the components onto the mat and you're ready to play the game. It's a super simple spatial reasoning game where each person is taking turns placing pawns between two objects on that mat that share the same color. You have to be able to place it your pawn directly between two where nothing else is blocking it. And then you collect the pieces that you've gone between. And then everybody will place all their pawns, taking two pieces, and then you'll evaluate the board, and each player will get all the remaining pieces on the board that are in closest proximity to one of their pawns. I think there are like seven different colors of game piece, and the winner of the game is the person that wins the majority. Three out of the four pieces in four of the seven colors. And that's the whole game. Like you could now literally play this game. There are no other rules than that. I enjoyed my play. It was very quick. I kind of just raced through it. I don't know that this is like the kind of thing that I'm that interested in like deeper engagement with. I just don't think like this super stripped down pure spatial reasoning puzzle is my jam. But I absolutely love the look of this game. I love the novel approach. I mean, it's the best setup and tear down in board games. Like you just dump it on the board, and then when just pick it up, you just pick up the edge of the tile and throw it back, or the edge of the mat, ball it up and put it back into the cylinder. I mean, that's pretty fun. Like that's honestly the most fun part for me. But but yeah, very cool game. CMYK is an awesome studio doing really beautiful, interesting designs. So I was really pleased that Chris showed me this one, in 5 minutes between games.
Cool. And that's Lacuna from CYMK Games. And next, Jake's going to talk to us about Sea Salt and Paper from Bruno Cathala and Theo Revere.
Sea Salt and Paper is a very simple card game in which players are trying to get the most points by collecting sets of shells or octopus or penguins, or get a mermaid card, and then you're trying to collect like a lot of the same colored cards. There is some really interesting and good game design in Sea Salt and Paper. I think that makes this game that is just incredibly slight, incredibly random, fun, rewarding, and almost kind of like I think the production goes a long way. The art on this game is pictures of origami, which is just so novel and like I don't know. It sweeps me away in the theme. Like, it makes a game that's not probably that relaxing feel like a relaxing, chill time to spend. You're basically just drawing a card, and then if you've got a match of two of the action cards, you can play them down to do a super simple ability, like maybe draw another card or take another turn, which is just drawing a card, um, or stealing a card from one player's hand, which is really powerful and slightly more difficult to pull off, because instead of having just two of the same, you have to have exactly one swimmer card and exactly one shark card. Two sharks won't do it. It has to be a swimmer shark.
Interesting.
And then the most interesting twist is at the end, you play to the first to 7 points in their hands plus what's in front of them. And if you achieve 7 points, you could do nothing. You could just let that information remain a secret to you and continue play. Or once a player has 7 or more points, they can say one of two things. You could say stop, and then everybody just reveals how many points they have and scores them. Or you could say last chance, meaning the other players in the game each get one more turn to try and score as many points as they can, and then everyone reveals their hands. And if the person who said last chance has the highest, they get to score those points plus a color bonus, so plus points for their single largest set of same colored cards. But if they miss, then everybody gets to score their hand and their color bonus. So there's some interesting, I think there's some interesting considerations there about when to call stop, when to call last chance. You might want to push your luck more if you're like, you just play hands of this, like first to 40 points or something. So if you're way behind, you probably want to push your luck a bit more. It's a game that is not, it lives in the space of a game like Quicks, where it's like very simple. You could you could play 100 times, teach somebody, and they beat you in their first game of it. But I think there's enough design space there where you can kind of like push at the margins to give yourself like a slightly better chance of winning a game here or there with skillful play, which is a type of game decision space that I find I really enjoy. And Sea Salt and Paper is one that I think is kind of like right there with Quicks as kind of one of the premier example of this type of marginal advantage decision space games.
I love this type of card game. Have you played it at? You said this was a 4-player game. You've
This was
also
a
played it at
3-player
2.
game.
This was
But yeah,
3-player.
most
Okay.
of I own this game and I play it with Bridget and I played it with my mom, and so most of my plays have been at 2, which I think is probably the best player count for this game. The more players you add into it, I think the more it just feels like kind of chaotic, because it's really, really hard to, at 2 players, you could like be a little more strategic about like what you're discarding, trying not to help somebody. But the more players you have, I think the more kind of random it becomes. But that's okay too, because it's always a pleasurable, pleasant game.
Cool. So this is definitely Sea Salt and Paper. I recommend.
Yeah. Why don't we skip this next one and jump right down to the Resistance? Wait for it, Brendan. Avalon. Yeah, I know that we had solemnly sworn to never
Yeah.
play the Resistance with Avalon components, but try
You
as
were
I might,
bewitched.
and I did bring my copy of Resistance with no extra rolls. The group decided they only would want to play if they used the Avalon
They
box.
forced you into it and used paper to write rolls?
No. Tyler brought his copy
Oh,
of
okay,
Resistance
okay.
Avalon. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
So we played a 6-player game of Resistance Avalon. This is the classic
2012
kind of
Dawn Escrows. Yeah.
genre-defining social deduction game, where you've got traitors and you've got good people. The twist in Resistance Avalon is it adds some special roles. So we played a 6-player game and we used 2 special roles. The roles we used is Merlin. So Merlin gets to know secretly who all is on the good team. Or no, they know everything. They get to see who the bad people are, which then clues them into who the good people are. And then the bad people get the assassin role. So at the end of the game, if the good people win, as I suppose they're more likely to do because they have a Merlin who knows everything, versus in base Resistance where the good people know absolutely nothing, it's balanced by the assassin role, where the villains get one chance to assassinate, to just guess who Merlin is, and if they get it right, then they snatch victory from the jaws of defeat and win. There's another podcast, Game Brain, that people always get mad because all they want to do is talk about how they're like exciting games of Resistance. And I totally get why there's the urge to do that, because I mean, this game is so good and it just does such a better job of telling a story than almost any other game. And we had a great story unfold in our game, which I will now relay to you. So basically, I was a good person, just basic good person. And I was the person to lead a mission. So just at random, I picked Jared to go on a mission. We passed it. Then the next person to go was William, and William picked Jared and me to go on a mission, and we passed it. And so we're starting to feel pretty confident. You just have to win 3 to win. Like maybe we've got, against all odds, maybe we got 3 out of we've just got lucky. We got 3 out of the 4 of us good people right here. So Jared throws one other person in the mix, as we have to do, and we reveal the cards. Victory, or success, fail.
Yes.
There were two fails in it. So being the brilliant mastermind that I am, I deduced that there's no way Jared could possibly be. See, I know I'm good, obviously, and I think there's no way Jared could possibly be the villain, because if Jared was on the villainous team, there's no way he would choose a mission that has 2 bad people on it. The only 2 in the game, right? Because then that would create this opportunity that 2 fails would come up, which is like a complete disaster for the bad team. And it's up to Luke, the next person after Jared, to pick a team. And Luke decides that he's going on the mission. He wants, I can't remember, somebody else, like that's neither of us, to go on the mission, and not the person that was new on the mission. That I was pretty sure, like, that the new person got added had to be bad.
It was Jared and William, though.
And yeah,
yeah. Okay.
But the best part was Luke has to decide between me and Jared to go on the mission, and he says I'm gonna flip the coin, and he flips the token, and it comes up red, and he's like, okay, Jake's on the mission, and I'm like, okay, fine. And
I love that Luke just coin flipped it.
So he coin flips it, and then we go on the mission. We succeed, and they have to decide who the villain is. And Jared's like, I'm sure it's Jensen, and William's like, I think it's Luke, because Luke didn't he didn't set the terms of the coin flip. He just flipped it and picked Jake. and Jared went with Jensen, and it ended up being that it was Luke as Merlin, and the coin flip was a total ruse. It was just a complete gambit.
Oh my gosh.
Because I was like, me being an idiot was just like so passionately like, Jared has to go on this mission. Like, if you're a good person, you'll send Jared on this mission for sure. And Luke's trying to find any way to like not.
Like, I'm gonna flip a coin. Okay, I choose Luke. I choose Jake.
Yeah, I'm like, don't put me. Like, you gotta pick Jared before me.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So it was really fun. Yeah, so I think the game's great either way. I honestly, despite that being fun, I'm still don't think you need the special roles.
Yeah,
I honestly think, like, I played it once, but it felt too easy to win as the good people. Maybe that's a 6-player problem, but with 4 good people, 2 bad people, and you get Merlin, it feels like the game more often than not will come down to that assassin decision.
Yeah,
and that is a less exciting way to play out than the actual like outcome of the missions being the thing that's the most exciting to me. So I'm staying pat on my base. Resistance is the thing to do. But of course, if you've played that a ton and want to add some more spice to it, then the Avalon role is pretty great also.
Nice. Awesome. So that was the Resistance Avalon. Our guess just Avalon. If you're cool, you just say Avalon. You don't say the Resistance. But we just say the Resistance.
I think we should skip this next one and maybe just touch on a couple of refreshies that I think will be interesting to talk about.
That's
all right. Yeah.
That's, given the list of games in the Refreshies, that is more than all right. I'm so excited to hear about these.
Okay. So I'll start with my game of the con, I think, which was for the first time since last year at Geekway, I get a chance to play Guards of Atlantis II in the 3v3 mode. And as you would expect for a game as like rich and deep as this one, it just gets better the more you play it. Yeah. So we had an excellent game that was Charlie brought it out again as his game. So it was like Charlie and Luke and JC versus me, William, and Tyler, I think. Yeah. But I got to play like a totally different character that played very different from the snake person last time. This time I was Arian, the water knife person. So the thing I just love about if you're unfamiliar with this game, it basically seeks to mimic a Dota game like League of Legend onto the tabletop. So you're moving around. You have one figure that you're playing cards to move around and attack. You're trying to attack other players, but also neutral monsters in the middle. So there's multiple ways of win. You can win the game. You can win by attacking, killing your opponent's actual people the most, or winning kind of the minion battle to push the minions all the way into their base, which is really neat too, to have like multiple victory conditions, and gives you a lot of interesting choices as you go. The thing that makes it really sing, I think, is just how thematic the cards feel. I had a card that was called like Slippery Floors because I was like a water person. So I had like one just like huge moment in the game where I kind of got in the middle of a couple of our opponents and played Slippery Floor, which meant like everybody in range 3 from me can move at max of one space, and at least 2 of the people to go after me in turn order were planning to move multiple spaces. So that might not seem like a huge thing, but it's actually just like a major tempo swing and kind of like a just big moment in the game. It feels so thematic. Like I'm the water guy. I'm like using water to manipulate the environment or push and pull people a little bit.
And that captures the MOBA experience so well, right? It's sort of being like a support-ish character who uses their big special move at the exact right time, disrupts the enemy team, and causes a huge swing. That's
Yeah, like just
like
a bit of
perfect.
disruption.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And it was just a total blast. Like I the thing that's weird about this game to me still, and I think this just comes down to like how your group wants to play it and just try and get on the same page, is like the communication rules. So it's just kind of like you're not allowed to like talk numbers with your teammates or like say like what your cards do, but at the same time, it
I could
feels
take care
like
of that threat. You could say that.
yeah, right. Like, yeah. Well, and you talk at the table. It's like, should we attack Luke's character?
Yeah, yeah,
And then Luke's like, oh no, they might
yeah,
be attacking me. And you could say that, but like we are trying to, I tried to coordinate a play with Tyler where like I would push him one space so that he could like do an attack, and then it turned out that like I had to act after him because like the initiative order of our cards like 1 or 2 out. So that feels kind of
yeah,
like weird. And then you also like, it feels like the game wants you to know what your opponent's cards are, but
yeah,
like
for
not what
sure.
your teammates' cards are in kind
Mm.
of like a weird way to like. So I think it's tough to like have it both ways for a game. But like I think if you wanted to play with like closer to perfect information, I think that would be fine. And I think it's fine if you don't. So I think that's just like one kind of finicky thing that nags at me just a bit. But I really think this game overall is like feels like a total triumph in design, and it's exactly the kind of thing I want to be doing at a convention when I've got 10 gaming buddies. Like it'd be difficult to pull this off regularly in my day-to-day life, but 6 people getting together to have an epic battle in Guards of Atlantis 2 at a con, that's how to do it.
By perfect information there too, Jake, you mean just knowing the card pool on both
Right.
sides. Yeah, yeah, okay.
It often comes down to like I can do 4 damage to this person. Does
Right,
the cards in their hand have a 4 block on it or
right, or
not? And
not,
like
yeah.
once and you only have like 6 cards in your hand ever at a time, so it's like it's a small enough number that like it feels like if you just tried hard to remember stuff, maybe you could do it. But like why force people to try like you know what I mean? Like I don't know
Yeah,
if that feels like the type of like, is that what the design wants us to be doing, like
yeah,
trying to like memorize the numbers on your opponent's cards or not,
yeah,
or
totally.
teammates cards.
There's something about this game, Jake, that I think a lot of times epic games accomplish feeling epic by being long and having lots of decisions in them. And I think Guards of Atlantis 2, it's not a fast game necessarily, but you don't make a ton of decisions, but all the decisions you make are of great impact, potentially. The stakes feel really high, and I think there's something really exciting about it playing a high stakes game with relatively few decisions compared to its weight that make it feel epic. And
Totally.
I would love to play more Guards of Atlantis too.
And it plays
Yeah.
quicker than you'd
It's
think.
a 60-minute game, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 60 to
Yeah.
90.
Totally. So that's Guards of Atlantis too.
Awesome. All right, next up, Mini Express, which is designed by someone you heard earlier, Mark Garrett's, the designer of Lacuna, which is fascinating to me because these games could not be more different in like theme and scope. Mini Express is a cube rails style game, but I think that Mark Garrett is a designer to take note of, because what these games both do is distill something down elegantly to its like most simple parts, and yet remains an incredibly fun and engaging experience. So in Mini Express, you have two possible things you can do on your turn, which like I already love that. Like I'm in.
Yeah.
If if you tell me that, I'm in. Which is that you can either buy a stock in a company by reducing your influence to pay for it equal to the number of trains that it has in its active supply. Whenever you buy a stock, you put three more trains in the active supply up to 5. Or you could take as many of the trains as you want in the active supply and use those to connect cities on the board. When you connect to a city, you go up in influence in 2 of the 4 train companies. And then the end
That's
of the
the game.
game, you get points equal to your influence. Basically, yeah, there's like one other marker that ticks up the more like a train covers ground, basically. For every space that's not a city the train goes into, that marker goes up, and that will change like how valuable first, second, third influence is in the company. And then you multiply that times the number of shares you have to get your final score at the end of the game.
Cool.
It's cube rails simplified. Definitely my favorite cube rail game I've played. This is my second time playing Mini Express, the first being at Geekway Mini earlier this year. Freaking awesome game. Like I think if you're somebody who has played, some of the capstone releases in the Gauge series, Irish Gauge, Iberian Gauge, Ride the Rails, that type of stuff, and you haven't at least looked up what's going on in Mini Express, it's worth your time. I think it's just like a fantastic distillation of the concept. It can be pretty opaque to like figure out like what you should do, but it plays fast. Really, really engaging, really fun. I want to play this one a lot more.
Cool. So that's Mark Garrett's Mini Express. Jake, what's next?
I played Glory to Rome. I mentioned it before. I had a 5-player game of it. I just bring this up to say, like, kind of unfortunately didn't pop as well as my first play, what I think we played at 4, and I really loved it. I don't know if that's the player count. I'm feeling just like a little bit wackier between
Yeah.
turns because it has like sort of a lead or follow mechanism, which can make things feel a little crazy, or just the fact that like I think in a game that's like kind of like boot heel engine building, where you're just like trying to manufacture something out of nothing, you might just not get cards that synergize well. And I felt like that's kind of what I just couldn't get anything going the whole game. So that was a little just it kind of tempered my impression of this game just a bit. I still think it's a very cool game, very cool design. I really want to continue to play it more. But just kind of a wonky play of Glory to Rome, unfortunately. 2 more to talk about, and these we've talked about on the podcast before.
So they're Refreshies.
Refreshies, that's right. And I just wanted to share that I finally did it, Brendan. I played Findorff, and we all drafted the structure cards at the beginning. And let me tell you, I'm never
With
playing without drafting again.
Glory to Findorff?
Not because it actually improved the game that much, but because it simplified the setup considerably.
Really nice. You're just like,
Yeah,
here's your cards, pick some of these.
Yeah, it really didn't matter. It didn't feel, at least to me in that initial play, like drafting the structures changed the decision space so much. And I think largely that's because it's so important to race for the structures that are in the open market at the beginning anyway.
Sure.
I think it mattered a little bit, and like it gave you a little bit more sense of like, okay, I should probably be going for brick early because a lot of these require brick or whatever. But it remains a great game, and I came away from that feeling like it's probably just the best way to play, and even potentially to learn the game, just because I don't think it matters that much. Like these structures are wildly powerful, but they all are. So
Sure.
I don't think you could really shoot yourself in the foot that much. And it's also kind of nice having it forces. We were passing around the glossaries quite a bit, but it sort of forces people to have a sense of what their cards do at the beginning of the game, which I think also increases your like feeling of agency. Versus, if you get dealt a random hand of cards, some of the more expensive ones, maybe you're not even like looking at those until later, and that might create a more like stuttering play experience as people are kind of passing around the glossary during play more, which happened less here.
Nice.
So yeah, Findorff, I still love it. It was a great play, and I'll be using the drafting variant moving forward, though didn't impact the decision space that much. That was my takeaway.
Still a top 10 game for you.
Still a top 10 game for me. And I've gotten some flack about that, and I just wanted to say to those people, I don't care. I guess.
Because you really like Findorff.
I like it. Yeah. I really like it.
Cool.
And I continue to enjoy playing it.
Awesome.
And lastly, as is become Geekway tradition, Brendan, we played an 8-player game of challengers live on the table, and it was made a little bit more special, a little more interesting, because my buddy Paul Solomon, who may or may not be somebody who's given me the most grief about Findorff being on my top 10, approached me and said, I got you something. And he handed me something I did not know that it had existed. It was a mini expansion for challengers called the Lucky Coin expansion. So the Lucky Coin expansion is 16 coins. And the way it works is each player starts the game with 2 of these coins. And on your turn, you can discard the coin as an extra hand discard. So in the deck building phase, you get to draw 5 cards, and you can throw those back to see 5 new cards if you don't like them, or you could take 1 card and throw the remaining back for 4 new ones. The coins give you 2 opportunities over the course of the game to throw back 1 more time. Maybe I still don't like those 5 I got. Now I've gotten 5 new ones, or I can even do that again. So it just increases your agency just a bit, and I think avoids what is one of the most painful experience of challengers, which is when you get just absolutely nothing in a deck building phase to support your deck at all. It could just feel really bad to just hit a complete blank through no fault of your own, while you know your other opponents are all improving their deck. Or if you do such a good job and never need them, they just count it as extra fans at the end of the game, 1 each.
There's also, this opens up the decision space a ton, because there's a lot of cards early on in the game that are significantly better if you have pairs or certain combos. So I think this could make for really interesting decisions around, do you use these lucky coins in the early part of the game to build a solid base, or do you save them and wait until the end of the game and use them to try to get pairs of the C deck cards that are incredibly strong? If you could pair up or even get a set of 3 of those using lucky coins, that's bonkers good. So this is a really cool way, I think, to enhance the decision space of challengers without a lot of rules overhead. But how did it play out in practice?
Yeah, it played out great. I mean, honestly, you definitely don't need the Lucky Coin expansion. You could use any coin.
Your own lucky coins.
Yeah, right. To play it. And I think I will always play with this when I'm playing on the table for 2 reasons. One, I think it's just good game design. Having that extra agency is fun and nice, and it makes it a slightly different experience from the online game. Like, it makes it feel a little bit more epic just for the sake that it's different and you have more agency. So I thought it was great, and I would encourage other people to try it out for themselves if they enjoy playing challengers on the table. Overall, it was a great tournament. Unfortunately, it didn't go my way, but it's always great and energetic, I think, to have challengers hit the table, especially an 8-player game at a con, and then you get people kind of all crowding around watching the final game. It's just a fun and exciting experience that I hope other people check out.
What was your build?
Oh shoot, what did I build? I started out with like a bunch of sailors, and I ended up getting, I think, up to like 3 cooks. So
Okay.
So that
you need big bodies with cooks.
Yeah, my deck ended up pretty strong. I think I didn't win anything until like round 3, and then I won maybe like round 5 and 6, and thought I had a chance going into round 7, but I think I may have won like round 3, 4, 5. Then I hit Jared's absolutely insane Stable Boy band deck, and then I hit Luke in round 7, and we had a super close back and forth battle that he ended up just edging me out by like 1 card, and he hit Illusionist first off the top of the deck, where I think things had got a little different, then I could have beat him, but neither of us were going to make the final anyway, so it was just for bragging rights. It turned out.
That's awesome. Challengers in person is amazing. I mean,
Totally.
obviously, I think the same of it on BGA, but it's nice to revisit a game you love in a way you love playing it.
It does feel a little more painful when you're just like in your round 4 game. You're like, I haven't won anything yet. Like you don't have to like look somebody in the eye and say that online in a way
Yeah.
that you do in person. But yeah, totally fun, more emotional, more fun, great game. And yeah, I mean, and that was some of the games I played at Geekway to the West with Decision Space listeners this year.
Awesome. Well, if you have thoughts on any of these games, whether it's Mini Express or Sea Salt and Paper, or maybe you have a different ranking of the 3 Knizz games that Jake talked about, Medici the card game, Orongo, and Tower of Babel. If you're a real enthusiast and you want to set Jake straight, come into our Discord. There's a link to it in our show notes and on our website. And Discord, if you've never heard of it, is really just a chat room that you can join from your browser with other listeners of Decision Space alongside Jake and I. And we're always talking games. We'd love to hear from you. Also, let us know what you think of Nimala and the Veil of Eternity, 2 games that Jake and I are now officially playing on Board Game Arena. And also, for our listeners, since I have a lot of requests, leave us a review. Thank you to those of you who support us on Patreon. And also, let us know what you think of Freshies and Refreshies.
And thank you to Hembry for our intro and outro song, Reach Out. See you next week. Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.